We like that, Calvin. You did a good job. Anyway, very good. It's good to see our regular Sunday morning crowd this morning. Thank you for being here. Blessings to you. I just got it's good to see Kenneth Johnson back there in the back, especially. Glad you're strong. Just a few announcements. I want to say congratulations to Melody and Lane Holton on the birth of their grandson, Matthew Weston Holton. You see them, give them a word of congrats. And just before Sunday school, there'll be a trustees meeting in the chapel, 10 o'clock. Some of y'all will need to be a part of that. And next Sunday, the following Sunday, there will be a called church conference, what we call a charge conference. It will be in the sanctuary, 10:45. We'll be voting on the acquisition of the Warren House down here on the corner. So you might want to be a part of that. So that's next Sunday at 10:45. Just want to make sure everybody hears that. Okay. All right. In the traditional Easter greeting, He is risen.
He is risen indeed.
He is risen indeed. He is risen. He is risen indeed. Again, thank you for being here as we celebrate. If your heart is still tender from the passing of a loved one, I pray that something about this day, even this worship service, will comfort you and remind you of the hope of eternal life for those who are in Christ. Our scriptures from John chapter 20. Early on Sunday morning, Mary from the town of Magdala, or Mary Magdalene if we call her, went to Jesus' tomb, saw that it had been opened, that the large stone had been rolled away from the entrance, and then she ran to tell Peter and John. Peter and John ran to see the tomb. They looked in. They saw only the linen cloths that had wrapped Jesus' body and his face, and shortly thereafter they returned home. But Mary stayed behind, crying outside the tomb. And as she wept, she stooped and looked in. And she saw two white-robed angels, one sitting at the head, the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" the angels asked her. "Because they've taken away my Lord," she replied, "and I don't know where they put him." She turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. "Dear woman, why are you crying? Who are you looking for?" And she thought he was the gardener. "Sir," she said, "if you've taken him away, tell me where you've put him, and I will go and get him." "Mary," he said. She turned and cried out, "Rabboni," which is Hebrew for teacher. "Don't cling to me," Jesus said, "for I haven't yet ascended to the Father. But go find my brothers and tell them that I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene found the disciples, told them, "I have seen the Lord." And then she gave them his message. And we skipped down 5 or 6 verses. One of the disciples, Thomas, nicknamed the twin, was not with the others when Jesus came. They told him, "We've seen the Lord." But he replied, "I won't believe that unless I see the nail wounds in his hands and put my fingers in them and place my hand into the wound in his side." 8 days later, the disciples were together again, and this time Thomas was with them. The doors were locked, but suddenly, as before, Jesus was standing among them. "Peace be with you," he said. And then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. Look at my hand. Put your hand in the wound in my side. Don't be faithless any longer. Believe." "My Lord and my God," Thomas exclaimed. Then Jesus said to him, "You believe because you've seen. Blessed are those who believe without seeing me." And this is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. And for centuries we've looked up in the night sky and examined the stars and the planets and just assumed that they revolve around the earth. This understanding of the universe is called the Ptolemaic system, an earth-centered or geocentric universe. But then along came Nicolaus Copernicus, 1473, whose research and study demonstrated, no, the earth and the planets actually revolve around the sun. This is called the heliocentric system or sun-centered system of the universe, what we call solar system. Big deal. Well, it was a big deal. It was such a big deal and shift in the change in human thinking that Copernicus met with opposition among his colleagues, his fellow astronomers, and even from church leaders. It was just difficult, as it is for some today, to accept the fact that the universe doesn't revolve around us. Today, astronomers call this massive shift in thinking the Copernican revolution. It's a perfect example of what Thomas Kuhn referred to in the early 1960s as a paradigm shift. A complete change in our thinking about the universe, a revolution in our worldview. At the turn of the 20th century, 1900 exactly, Lord Kelvin, the British physicist and engineer, told an assembly of his colleagues that there is now nothing new to be discovered in physics. All that remains is more and more precise measurement. Well, what Lord Kelvin didn't know is that 5 years later, Albert Einstein would publish his article on special relativity that would challenge the present-day Newtonian physics that had held sway in the scientific community for over 200 years. Einstein's work initiated another paradigm shift, a revolution in how scientists look at the physical laws that rule the universe. And today, there are articles in scientific journals that relate to quantum physics that are challenging some of the assumptions of Einsteinian physics. Just one discovery can revolutionize our entire view of the universe and the world and our place in it. Consider how our thinking was changed when we first heard these words: the eagle has landed. And ever since that moment in history, how many times have we heard or said, well, if we can send a man to the moon, we ought to be able to do anything. It really changed our thinking. I saw a video of Macworld 2007 where the late Steve Jobs introduced to his Apple employees new technology that had been kept secret and under wraps for 2.5 years. Today, we're introducing 3 revolutionary products. A widescreen iPod with touch control, and there was a round of applause. A revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communications device. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. He repeats himself. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device, and we're calling it an iPhone. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone and changed everything. Paradigm shift. And what happens on a universal, global scale can happen on an individual and personal level, a complete change in our thinking. I remember right after Peggy and I had our first date, our families, even though our families were close friends, I kept thinking that I was going to blow it. I didn't want to ruin this new relationship the way it seems I'd done with every other girlfriend in the past. I just couldn't get it right. I'm sorry, and I didn't want it to happen again. Not with Peggy, not again. So right after our first date, I went away for 3 days, isolated myself up in a cabin that was used for a rescue mission called Camp Joy, Columbus, Georgia. I didn't take any food. I took some juice, some water. I was going to fast for 3 days and pray, get serious, read the Bible, draw close to God. I remember playing mental games on the basketball court that they had there. All right, Keith. if you make this next shot, it means she likes you. And I would shoot until I rang a shot. There, she likes you. All right, if you can make 3 in a row, she'll go out with you again. And I'd shoot until I'd get 3 in a row. You guys know what I'm talking about. I'm sorry to be up here telling our secrets, but I prayed some more. I really didn't want the opportunity to be a part of Peggy's life to just pass me by. When I got back to civilization, I was a little hesitant, didn't really know what to do. My mom said, "You need to call Peggy." "No, Mom, I don't think so." "Do you think so? Should I call?" "You think?" "Okay, I'll call." So I called Peggy, hoping to check the temperature of the water. We'd only had one date, and I really didn't know what she thought about me. But I'll never forget her words on the phone. 5 words. She said, "Why didn't you call me?" Those 5 words changed my life. I realized at that moment she likes me. I think maybe, or at least I got a real shot at this. Why didn't you call me? She was waiting for me to call her. Maybe she likes me. 5 words. The world tilted on its axis. Life is good. Paradigm shift. A complete change in our view of the world. And what happens on a global scale, or on a personal level, can happen at a deeper spiritual level. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Mary Magdalene really thought Jesus was dead. She had witnessed the crucifixion. Matthew 27. Many women were there watching the crucifixion from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. Mary had seen life pour out from Jesus' body, drop by drop. No one had ever survived a crucifixion. No one. The Roman soldiers saw to it. And recall how Governor Pilate wanted to be absolutely certain that Jesus was dead before he released the body. Crucifixion was an incredibly efficient means of death. So Mary was fully convinced that Jesus was dead. And there had been no funeral or memorial service for Jesus to give her some closure on his death. No decent burial. Well, only what a couple of men could do for the body. Joseph of Arimathea, Nicodemus. I mean, they probably didn't get it right. So early that first morning, Easter morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene and several others bring a small collection of burial spices to the tomb to keep the body from smelling so badly as it decayed, and to add a little honor and dignity to the passing of a close friend who had been so publicly humiliated on a cross. She sees the tomb has been raided. The stone that sealed the entrance has been removed. The body of Jesus is missing. She finds Peter and John, report the news. Quickly they run ahead of her to see for themselves. And after a short investigation, seeing only the grave clothes, but no body, they return home. Mary stays behind to weep. She looks into the tomb. She sees 2 angels. They ask her, "Why are you crying?" What do angels know about suffering and death and sadness? Mary tells them about the missing body. She turns to leave, and Jesus, unrecognized by her, is standing there. And Jesus, who knows everything about suffering and death and sadness, asks the same question. "Why are you crying?" She explains her distress, and Jesus calls her name, Mary. One word. In that split moment, this person knows my name. The voice sounds familiar. It's Jesus. He's not dead. He's alive. Paradigm shift. A total change in her thinking. What would Mary say to us? From Mary's life, Jesus had cast out or removed 7 demons. Some have said she was a prostitute. We don't know that for sure. Possibly. What we do know is that Jesus is so winsome, so loving, so kind. He attracted prostitutes and greedy tax collectors, among others. He was known to be a friend of sinners. And why? Well, maybe their lives had gotten so horribly dysfunctional that they really needed his message of hope and grace. Perhaps they needed to hear about the possibility of leaving the past behind, about having another chance at life, and Jesus' message, you can be born again. That was attractive to them. That's what Mary would tell us. If your life isn't working, help is available because Jesus is alive. So whatever demons and destructive habits have taken over, Jesus can give you your life back and make you whole again. You can have a paradigm shift. Your life can be restored. Christ can give you the power to overcome this world and the temptations therein and the temptations within. This can be a new day for you. And this can be a new you for the day. Because Jesus is alive. Just whisper a prayer. Simple prayer. Ask for help. Just see how Jesus responds. Just whisper a prayer. I think of Thomas the twin. Surely he saw Christ's crucifixion. Probably saw the soldiers lance his side. Now, how do we know? Because Thomas said he wouldn't believe unless he could examine the side that had been lanced. I think he was there. I think he saw it. I'm not going to believe he's alive because I saw what they did to him on the cross. I saw his last breath. I saw the soldiers pierce his side and the blood and the water that gushed out. He was dead on that cross, without a doubt. And if you want me to believe that you've seen him alive, well, I don't believe you. I'll have to examine the scar from that spear and the wounds from the nails that pierced his hands. And don't try to fool me with a Jesus look-alike. My brother and I know that trick too well. And then Jesus appears in the room, even after the doors have been locked, pronounces peace upon them all, says to Thomas directly, put your finger here, come, put your finger here and look at my hands, put your hand into the wound in my side, don't be faithless, believe. Now I imagine Thomas dropped to his knees on the floor and exclaimed, my Lord and my God. Paradigm shift. Complete transformation from doubt to believe. What goes through a person's mind when he or she realizes, I've got the winning lottery ticket? I'd like to know that, Stanley. Maybe. What does a woman experience when she answers the door and sees representatives from Publishers Clearinghouse standing out there with a large 4-foot-long check? What would Thomas say to her? In John 10, Jesus' life is threatened because he was claiming to be God. For safety, Jesus leaves Jerusalem with his disciples, crosses the Jordan River. When he gets word that his friend Lazarus has died, he eventually says, let's go to Judea again. His disciples are disturbed. They were just trying to stone you to death. What do you mean? Go back to Jerusalem, to Judea. Teacher, they're trying to stone you. What are you talking about? But Thomas says to his fellow disciples, let's also go that we may die with him. Thomas, let's also go that we may die with him. Now here's my point. If you could convince Thomas, you had all of him. He would give you everything. Heart, mind, soul, and body. Just convince him. And he's ready to die for you. And Jesus knew that about Thomas. Come here, Thomas. Take your hand and touch the scar. Examine the wound in my side. Stop doubting and believe. what would Thomas say to us? He'd say, if you have any doubts, Jesus knows all about them. If you're truly willing to see the truth, He will reveal the truth to you. And he might ask, once you're convinced of the truth, will you give Him your life, mind, and soul, and strength? Stop doubting. Stop making excuses. Start believing. That's what Thomas would say. And by the way, tradition tells us that Thomas made his way all the way up to India, preaching Jesus and the resurrection. And today, guess what? There are Christians in India who call themselves Saint Thomas Christians. There's some question about how Thomas died, but he gave his life for his Lord, whose scars he had closely examined. And there's one last scene. Feeling discouraged, I'm sure, after Jesus' death, several disciples go back fishing. They fish all night. They catch nothing. Jesus appears on the shore, calls out, throw your nets on the right side of the boat and you'll find some fish. They fished all night. They threw their nets out one more time, and the catch is so large they can't bring it into the boat. John looks toward the shore, squints his eyes to look through the foggy mist, and exclaims, "It is the Lord." And with that, Peter puts on his outer garments, jumps, the Bible says, threw himself into the water, swims to shore. The others are in the boat following behind. And there at the shore, they have breakfast. Bacon, eggs, and grits. Just seeing if you're listening. All right. No. Fish that Jesus was cooking for them on shore. And Jesus asks Peter 3 times one question. Do you love me? Peter would say this morning, you can blow it. You can blow it big. You can be a failure in life. You can run away or gradually wander away, and Jesus will still love you, really, and want to know if you love Him. Peter would say, Jesus is always willing to welcome you back and will change your life. Just come home. Just come back home. And when you do, you might even find on the table a fish sandwich. Let's pray.